the Central Valley Museum in Tonopah, Nevada. And I know all of you watchers know Tonopah. It was very famous for the Clown Motel and Mizpah and other haunted locations. But you need to stop by here. It's about a 2-minute drive from Mizpah?
Yes, 2 minutes.
Yeah, maybe 2 minutes as long as you observe the speed limit.
Alan.
And how long have you been doing this for?
Okay, for close to 40-some years. I'm retired from the state of Nevada, and then I got another job. The state job wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
And I went to work as a history consultant down in Nellis Air Force Base.
Ah.
At a testing training range. Now, that was fun.
Can't believe how much knowledge you have for this town and the love that you have for it shows. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, how long you've lived here?
Was born in Tonopah in 1945. I made it as far as Goldfield, Nevada, 26 miles away, where my grandfather settled way back in the early 1900s. My 2 brothers and I'm the youngest of 3 brothers, and the 3 of us were brought up loving history. Where that love for history came from is my dad was born and raised in Goldfield, and he did a lot of mining over there and worked on the Old Tonopah and Goldfield Railroad and had been in the area most of his life. We'd hear stories when we were kids about old-time events in Goldfield that he actually lived. And as we grew up, we would talk to the old-timers that were here from back in the mining days. And
When did you start collecting?
Oh, I'd say at least 50 years ago. And that was collecting old photographs, old original photographs, documents, old mining stock certificates, anything old.
And then you started writing about it, right? You've published some books.
Later years.
When we met you, you were outside. Fill in what you're doing out in the cemetery for our viewers.
Well, the old Tonopah Cemetery, used up till 1911, has always fascinated me. When I did a lot of newspaper research, including from my position with the Air Force as a history consultant, began looking closer and closer at those. And amazed me first was the veterans, the number of veterans, Civil War, Spanish-American War, Philippine War, that wound up in the old mining camp, Goldfield and Tonopah.
And, why is that?
All I can say to that is they must have heard the streets in Tonopah were paved with silver, like many of the other people that came here. And the more I got into researching those and finding articles on the old-timers buried down at the Old Tonopah Cemetery and the Goldfield Cemetery as well, it just fascinated me. And each one of those grave sites I did research on was a history lesson of its own.
And how many graves are in there?
There's no less than 300 Tonopah Cemetery.
And my understanding, too, is when you found the cemetery, it didn't look like it does now.
It didn't. It was, being no one was buried there since 1911, it was in bad disrepair. The reason it discontinue using it in 1911 is because up south, about 2 blocks from that old cemetery, was a big silver processing mill, a Tonopah Extension Mining Company. And after withdrawing the silver out of the ore, the rock, grinding it and all, the balance would flow down, as we called tailings, and down to the north. What happened to be right in the way was that old cemetery, and the grave sites slowly being covered up by tailings from the Tonopah Extension Mill. That didn't set too well with the locals, so therefore the mining company, who were putting out those tailings, donated land down a half a mile below the old original cemetery. And that's one still in use down below.
So I would also love to touch on, you were out there with dowsing rods.
We thought that was interesting.
That's super interesting and something our viewers would really like to know more about. So like how you learned to use them, and why did you put it together that you were going to be able to find graves with that?
Yeah, how did that get started?
Okay. Well, our dad showed my brothers and I when we were kids how to find underground electrical cables and pipelines. I know some places even water they look for with those dowsing rods. We chose that as our first project as a historical society 46 years ago or so. Wanted the town folks to see that we do something as a historical society. I remembered my dad showing us those rods for underground pipelines and all, and so I thought, well, I'll just walk across down at the graveyard and see what they do. I knew there were no electrical cables or water lines there, but I'd walk along, they'd cross, and they'd straighten out, cross, straighten out, and I put a rock at each spot. Then, 3 years later, a plot map was found up at Round Mountain, Nevada, and donated to us, the Historical Society.
Who had that?
It's a mystery how it wound up there. But the plot map had the names of the majority of people buried down there. And so there, I went ahead and looked where I put a rock at each one of those spots where those rods crossed, and there was a grave on the map.
So it verified.
It verified it.
Wow.
So what did you feel in that moment when that happened? Were you like losing your mind out there? Because I feel like I would be like, oh my God, and just like, I don't even know.
And been using that method ever since, and I demonstrate it to a lot of the people at checking out the cemetery. Some it works for. My wife it doesn't work for, but it did work for my daughter when she was 7 or 8 years old. And
Gotta have the gift.
Feel like there's a mindset when you're doing it. Like, do you have an intention, what you're looking for? Or are you just out there
Letting it do its thing.
letting it do its thing?
just letting them do their thing. And many people that I demonstrate that for, and many that it works for, not all, show them how to hold the rods and all, the distance apart, and walk across a grave. And the majority of people, it crosses.
Interesting.
I noticed too that a lot of the I read a sign, I saw a sign that said that a lot of the gravestones were replaced or that they were new. They weren't the original gravestone. Were there gravestones, or how did you?
There were a number of stones there too, and
Our first project on this, after we chose it as a restoration project, was getting a grant and putting the fence around it. We did what we could with the graves. All of the ones with wooden fences around them are original ones, and the pipe fences
Okay.
are original grave markers. And the metal fences, they're original grave sites. But the rest was pretty topsy-turvy.
back at that time, I used to use, I'd get crews from the conservation camp, the state conservation camp, and they were pretty good workers, real good workers, and they helped out a lot with marking the grave sites. And with the map, I was able to look up in the death records. And another member of our historical society, Joni Eastley, she is the one here in one of the filing cabinets is a couple of drawers full of the death records. She does an in-depth record on all of them, where they came from, what they did, what did them in. But between that information she has found, the obituaries and death records and funeral records that I find accurate on placing the markers at the right places.
And even finding out their cause of death,
Cause of death.
because there is some pretty gruesome causes of death in a cemetery. And what got me was the children's section. I thought that was kind of unusual too. There was a whole area that was all children's graves.
It with the children, cholera, diphtheria, pneumonia, children and adults, and crib deaths. And so one little boy playing with another little boy, not too much beyond babies. One accidentally killed the other one playing games. Whatever happened on that, I no idea. But a lot of plagues, cholera, pneumonia, diphtheria, and a lot of people that during the pneumonia plague got out of town because they didn't want to get it, and within a short time they died because they had the virus in them already.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that there was a section just for the children.
There's a lot. There's a lot of children.
Yeah, like mixed in. I know there's some mixed in with the adults, but
Gosh, you can't help thinking that every pregnancy they must have. I hope this one makes it.
it's hard to think about now.
True in all the old mining camps.
Yeah, and you've got some interesting stuff out there. You had some graves that we saw down at the very end.
So, what do you know about the Belvada? Any interesting history that you just feel like
We're staying there
makes it
tonight.
unique?
Well,
Yes.
Very excited.
What should we know?
Yes, we have the old original elevator from the Belvada. The Klein family donated it to us in behind the museum. And it brings back a lot of memories to me because here as kids, there was a lack of entertainment for kids. And we would go there, a group of us, and go up and down in the elevator. Well, lack of entertainment. And pretty soon we'd hear somebody up in there, get out of here, you kids. And so we'd leave. And I'm sure after we left, more kids would go in there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really nostalgic every time I look at that old original elevator. It was donated to
So
us.
you were in that elevator as a child.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we haven't really been able to find much about the Belvada.
So at the Miss Spa, did you go in there as a child at all, or?
Yes, when I worked at the funeral home, we had a sides in there, and one fellow, he lived out of town and would come in every so often, and he did have medical problems, and he sat at the bar. What they found out after the event that he passed away, he drank a couple of shots of whiskey, and he fed down on a whole bottle of aspirin. And it wasn't long, he dropped over dead off the bar stool.
Wow. Oh, right there, down in the lobby.
And then also, they had a Hawaiian entertainer there. That was back in the 50s. And she dropped dead on the stage when they used to have a stage at the west end of the bar. So
She dropped dead?
yeah, she heart ailment.
Oh, heart attack.
Yeah,
Oh, that's awful.
up on the top floor. Well, rather than carry the gurney all the way down the 4 floors, so we went down in the elevator, and we had to get the gurney leaned up in there. So, and I felt bad about the people eating at the restaurant that morning, having breakfast, because here we opened the elevator door, and a lot of the booths had in their visual, they could see who came into the elevator or who got on it, and here we wheeled out the remains of the fellow.
Wow.
So you think you can show us that elevator now?
Yes.
We got to get coats on because it is cold today.
But you need to stop by here. It's about a 2-minute drive from Mizpah?
Yes, 2 minutes.
Yeah, maybe 2 minutes, as long as you observe the speed limit. And he's got so much information. If you have any questions, he's your guy.
Oh yeah,
So-
even out on behind the museum, more exhibits.
Yeah, he's got buildings back there. He's got machinery from the mines. He's even got a piece of machinery that someone died on.
Yes, indeed. And we do have the old Otis elevator that was in the Belvada Hotel down on Main Street in Tonopah, the old original telephone.
Yeah, it's the Belvada Hotel, so.
Yeah, the original elevator.